Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. And let's be honest, some days we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining us inside the Bachelor Pad this week is the MILF that made America drop their jaw. That's right, Lannette West from season 2 of MILF Manor. Tonight we're going to talk the show, BTS, and a couple other sexy secrets and what it's like being a single mom on reality television. Let's not waste any more time. She's too hot to keep waiting. Welcome, Lannette West, to the show. Speaking of green, I have to ask, is that your favorite color?
It is because my eyes are green, so I
Yeah.
tend to look better in green because it kind of pulls out the green of my eyes.
Makes it pop. Because after the first time, I was like, okay, it's just like a green piece. But then I was kind of noticing, I was like, oh, she's wearing a solid amount of green. I think that might be her favorite color. So I was like, I'm going to ask.
You're bingo, you nailed it.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
nailed it.
but honestly, that's my favorite color too. So I was like, this was meant to be. Pretty good vibes. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? Money's the color green.
If only we had more of it, you know? Listen, I say my dream job is to become a trophy husband someday. Uh, it's true.
Hey, you gotta have goals, man. You gotta have
you,
goals.
you gotta have goals.
Good, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Honestly, it's so fun. I literally have a green shirt right next to me on the chair because I was gonna wear green today, and I was like, is that too much? It sounds like I'll just wear a jacket.
And I wore green.
You know what? I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have a costume change right now. We're gonna be matching.
Do it. Let's do it. Come on, let's do it. I love it. I appreciate that. That shows some unconditional support there. You know,
You're right. You know, that's just being a good host. You know, you got to make your guests feel comfortable.
the host with the mostest. I swear.
We've been having a lot of fun. We're chit chatting before the show started, guys. But tell me a little bit about like you and your backstory because I don't think that's one thing I really got. I mean, we got bits and pieces of it on the show, but I want to know like about you.
Oh, thank you. That's sweet. I was born and raised in Western North Carolina in the mountains. I don't necessarily talk like it except when I'm drunk and when I get mad. I kind of lost a lot of the hillbilly accent that most of my family have. So I'm not sure why, other than I went to college and I worked in DC for a bit, but I've always lived in North Carolina. So I worked around professionals and stuff. So I just kind of picked up, I guess, a flatter accent. And I laugh and I tell people I had to adopt some sort of Midwestern accent because if I talk like this and I look like this, everybody's going to think I'm stupid. And so I had enough stereotypes to overcome. I didn't want to have to overcome the severely Southern
Yeah.
stereotype. That's kind of my best answer for that. But I grew up there. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina when I was in middle school. So I did middle school and high school in Asheville. I graduated and went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. That's where I met my ex-husband and the father of my 2 children.
You said you and your ex-husband were married for 20 years?
Well, we were together for 20.
Okay.
We were together for 10 before we got married.
Okay.
I was not a big advocate of marriage. I didn't want to be married.
Mhm.
And we had our first son. We were kind of young. I was 24, he was 25. And then I was pregnant with my daughter 9.5 years later. And I was actually 6 months pregnant. And he was like, look, we got to get married. I was like, and he kind of wore me down, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I just took a half a day on a Friday, Cinco de Mayo, because I had to pick a date I could remember. We went to the courthouse and got married, and I cried the whole time because I knew it was an absolute mistake. I kind of felt like, well, I made my bed. I guess I got to lie in it, And so we got married, and it was predictably a disaster. I mean, I don't want to act like it was all bad. There were definitely some good times, and we have beautiful, healthy, surprisingly well-adjusted children. And so it was absolutely worth it. But the relationship between he and I left a lot to be desired. It was not good. We did not bring out the best in each other.
I just have to say, I think that might be the greatest story I've ever heard for so many reasons. One, it's normally the other way around. Normally, it's the woman having to like give the ultimate or like nudge the guy to be like, why don't you want to get married? But also, I was like, when you were like 10 years before we got married, I was like, yeah, I think at that point, I just would have let it ride. I don't think I would have pushed it too hard. 10 years and a kid? No, we don't have to get married.
And I really had the conversation with myself because I was in my early 30s and I wanted another child. And I knew the relationship with him wasn't the best, but we made beautiful children. And I wanted one more and I didn't want another baby daddy. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just be miserable until for the next like 10 or 12 years until my son graduates from high school, and then I'll leave him. And that's exactly what I did.
Not the premeditated. This a telenovela? Like, where are the writers at? Like production?
This is my life. I swear to God. I probably shouldn't admit this stuff, but that's the God's honest truth. I mean, because I came from a divorced family, and it was a train wreck, and I didn't want my children not growing up with an absent father, because I did, and I know what problems it created in my life, and I wanted to spare my children that. And I thought, by sacrificing my happiness in just being with him, because he was the father of my children, I was doing the right thing. And in retrospect, obviously it wasn't, because when we did finally tell the children we were getting divorced, my son was 18. He had just graduated from high school in May of 2015. And my daughter, she was 8 or 9 at the time, very precocious. And as soon as she got me alone, after we had told her that we were, separating and getting a divorce, she looked at me, and the very first thing that girl said to me was, "What took you so long?" And that broke my heart, because
That's
it's
a
like,
toughie.
yeah, because your kids know. Your kids know.
100%. Like the kids know that you shouldn't be together well before everybody else is willing to admit it, at least out loud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart. But at the same time, I did the best I could with what I had at the time. And,
Yeah, that's all we can do.
exactly.
If we had a time machine, would we go back? That's always the greatest question. But also, I'm not mad at the fact. Okay, so I don't even know if I've talked about this on the show. I had a list of like people that I wanted to have kids with because I thought we would make cute babies. I was like, do we necessarily like each other? No. However, would our kids be adorable? Yes. And then,
That's a compelling argument. That's a compelling argument.
right. I was like, nobody wants to have the ugly baby that you obligatorily have to be like, oh my God, it's so cute. No, you want an actual cute baby. Luckily, I had a couple friends and a roommate talk me out of it, and I just didn't start having babies,
That's probably the mature, intelligent choice to make. Absolutely.
which is surprising for a bunch of 19-year-olds. That was really mature of us to be like, you know what? Let's not just like start putting our dick places and getting people pregnant. Would it have been fun? Yes.
Absolutely.
I can only imagine there is a little bit of time from divorce into MILF Manor. How long before you went on the show? It was some years, right?
You mean from my divorce?
Yes.
Yeah, we separated in July of 2015, and then our divorce wasn't official until October of 2016.
Okay.
And we filmed the show in September of 2023. So I didn't know that I was for sure going to be on the show until 36 hours before I boarded a plane to Toronto to start filming.
I was also shocked that they chose Canada for like season 2. That's crazy. You obviously had a little bit of a hoe phase coming out, or
Yeah.
excuse my French. You're a classy lady, so you had a bit of an exploratory period.
Like that. Yeah, that is putting it mildly. Because to remind you, I went straight from college, from being with my ex-husband, my boyfriend, for a year and a half. Then I got pregnant, and then I went right into motherhood and being a professional and working. And there was no hoe phase. There was no, despite what my ex-husband thinks, there was no cheating. I never cheated on him. Let me
Yeah.
clarify that. And I can say that with a very clear conscience. So I didn't have that sexual renaissance that a lot of people have the luxury of experiencing in their 20s or even early 30s. And let me tell you something about women in their 40s.
They're amazing.
Those hormones hit. I think what it is, and I'm not a biologist or a physician or anything, but it's like your body's counting down the eggs that are left, and they're going, man, we got to get rid of these suckers. We got to multiply. And so I had the biggest hormone rush, like I did as a teenager. Like I thought about sex all the time. I wanted to have sex. I mean, I was like upset, like how I imagine men are all the time.
All the time is a lot. Like, give us some props, okay? We're not just Sex Pistols. It's like 85%, okay? It's like 85%.
Well, you do have to eat and sleep, so I give you that.
Thank you. Okay, we're reasonable. I was like, you don't have to fuck us all the time. Just majority of it.
Yeah, I was sort of saying, so that my sexual renaissance happened in my early 40s. And, with my son graduating from high school, I have felt like I had met my obligation that I had, set all those years ago. And I was like, I'm bouncing. And so I was out and went right into a open relationship with a man that was what you would describe as pretty sexually deviant. Like he wasn't a traditional kind
Mhm.
of guy, and had the most fun and learned about my body. And it was like the first time that I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed to have sex. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. And it's almost like I was really 22 in a
Mhm.
42, 43-year-old body.
Yeah.
I was ignorant. I had no idea about sex or my body.
So that's a beautiful thing. Just getting to discover or rediscover your body, no
Absolutely.
matter what age you're at, whether you are 17, whether you're 50, or anywhere in between, or plus, because it also changes. So, what brings you pleasure when you were younger is, at least for me, what I was into at 18 and 19 is a lot different at 30, what I like now.
I
Yeah.
can see
A
that.
lot different. Also, every time somebody says like I'm like discovering my body, the Aladdin soundtrack plays in my head. I just like a whole new world. I was like, 100%. It's a wild ride. It's a wild ride.
Well, it is because ironically, even though I was being so promiscuous,
Mhm.
I had more respect for my body and myself than I had ever had in my lifetime.
That's why I love dating older women, because you really do get the best of both worlds.
Mm.
Usually, they have boundaries, a pretty solid sense of identity, like what they want, who they are. We're all a little bit jealous, but they're not like the overly jealous type. And they're more okay being an actual partner, not being taken care of, so to speak. Like it's like an even more even relationship. That's why I think if I count them out, I've dated more older women than I have women my age or younger. Because you just have it going on.
Well,
Not to
it
mention,
takes time to figure shit out,
yeah,
and with time comes experience and wisdom and a sense of humility. Because, and two, let's face it, you're suddenly faced with your own mortality. I turned 50 and I was like, I've got more years behind me than in front of me.
yeah.
I mean, middle aged is not 50. Middle aged is like late 30s.
Now, don't stop. No, no, stop. That's not the narrative I'm going with.
Did I just
Okay.
traumatize you? I'm sorry.
Right, I was like, I have some time before middle age. You better behave, young lady.
Well, and you could argue that middle aged is a mentality and not a chronological age. I would give you that.
You're only as old as you feel, you
Absolutely.
know,
Absolutely.
and we are living older. So
Well, that's true.
yeah, so
Yeah, that's true.
we can bump it. But no, I do want to go out in a beautiful blaze of glory. I don't want to be super old and like wrinkly, like somebody's pug. I want to still look good in my coffin. Sorry, guys. That's just being real.
And I totally agree because I will fight the aging process as long as I feel like I'm winning it. When I start feel like, it's costing too much or it's looking weird,
Mhm.
then I'm just going to say fuck it and give up the Botox and the filler and the chemical peels and the CO2 laser and all that, and I'll just be old and I'll just lean into it.
I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording, but for those of you who don't know, who don't recognize this gorgeous face and bombshell of a body, is Lannette West from season 2 of MILF Manor. And I was telling her, I probably had 2 solid crushes on the show, and she made up 50%, maybe 60. Like you and Christina, I played it like I was in the show. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be like the next little like bombshell to come on. And I was like, I know exactly who I'm beelining for. Okay. So obviously we talked about it. You have kids, you are a certified MILF. What would you say is the biggest age gap that you've dated? And did they have a bedtime?
Well, let's first define dating. Repeated exposure to?
Fair enough. That's a techie question that we still haven't nailed down. What's the youngest partner you have had in an emotional or physical sense? And then
I
what was that?
think the biggest delta I've had is like 28 years.
Okay. You know, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's
Mom, if you're
respectable.
watching, close your ears. I dated a 53-year-old woman when I was 24. So I was right there. Listen, I understand that wine gets better with age, and so do women, okay?
That is, you know what? You probably learned more in that relationship than all your previous relationships combined, in all fairness, right?
No, that was like a trend for me. I think the oldest I've dated is 67, 68.
Wow, we have an official MILF hunter here.
Oh, it's true. I do. I like older women. What can I say? As long as you still have your teeth, we're in good shape. Denture is a little questionable. Let me have a glass first. But I love that like you weren't afraid of it, which I was curious about, because if you guys have watched the show, if you're going to watch the show, I don't. Maybe it was different. Maybe they edited it out. I didn't really see you shoot your shot with a lot of the younger guys. I felt like coming in, I was like, Well, hey, I guess it happened really quickly that you had young guys and all of a sudden you had dads. It's not like you were there for a few days. Like it seemed like it was like back to back.
It was the next day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, ooh, maybe, maybe this will happen. And I was like, no, I think she's pretty into the whole data sphere, which is okay.
Mhm.
But I was like, also, I want to say shout out to you because I think you were like one of the only people who I think did not have really, okay, I haven't finished, so maybe you have, but really big drama as well.
Just
Like,
wait.
I
Just
I-
wait.
I gotta wait.
You gotta finish the episode you just started. And you
Yeah.
will totally revise that statement.
Okay. Like I know they kind of showed it in the season one clip, and I was waiting for it. I tried to like picture the scenario in my head, so I was like, I know, obviously, we all know who the guy is that the drama would be with.
Anthony.
I can't even trash talk him because I kind of hope I'm maybe that like fun and well in shape when I'm that age. So yeah. But also, I did say this. I was like, I promise you, if he hurts Lynette, I will find a way to go back in time, or I would take a vacation. And I was like, Joey, you're my bro, but me and your dad are gonna have words.
You're
So
so
if
sweet.
you're listening, if you're watching, just know if a 6'3" black dude comes up to you, we're gonna have a conversation.
I appreciate that, man. Well, go ahead
Yeah.
and get ready.
No, I mean, like, you were so honestly, you were so genuine. I never doubted you from the start of the show. You were a girl's girl. Everybody seemed to like you. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I appreciate what you did with the whole Jamie situation. Crazy. Like, what? I literally can't even go there because then I'll get upset again. You just showed that you have such a great character, that you're so nurturing because you were like there. You listened to a lot of the problems that some of the women were having. You participated, like you never seemed standoffish or like you were afraid of anything. I was like, that's a woman right there. Like, like we just need to protect her at all costs.
You're so sweet. You're making me blush. Thank you.
Well,
That's
you
sweet.
should get your roses while you're alive. That's what I think.
I like that. I
And
like
I
that.
got a few dozen, okay, because Mother's Day is a couple days away, so I'm ready. Well, we talked about the age gap. We talked about that you have some drama coming up that you're not going to spoil for me, which I kind of appreciate. But I want to know like all the BTS because I've never met anybody who's actually been on like a dating show before.
Mhm.
As much as this is about the audience, it's like way more about me.
Well, chances are what you're curious about, your listeners are curious about, you know?
True, 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 true.
Yeah.
So, how long was the whole shooting experience? Was it like a few weeks? Was it a month? Or
It was a few weeks. I want to say it was 21 days in total.
okay,
It started the day after Labor Day, so it was like September 5th, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it was right around Labor Day in September, so early September. And then, not to spoil it, but I didn't fulfill the full 3 weeks. I left early.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I could imagine, and that seems to be a theme. Like a few people left early, like they didn't make it the full time.
Well, I was the only person that left of their own volition. Let's put it like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Which is also good on you.
I'm
You
glad I
had
did.
boundaries, you had character, and you stood by that. You didn't. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the butt of like anybody's joke. Or it's one thing to be embarrassed in like a small situation, but on potentially international television, no, thank you. You will not.
No. I totally agree. And I've got a daughter
Mhm.
and I take it very seriously about trying to set the best possible, I don't always succeed. I've made my mistakes along the way, but I have her in mind when I'm making some big decisions like that. Like, how would I want my daughter to be treated? Because sometimes I lose myself and I would take on more mistreatment because I think less of myself than I do of her. So I have to kind of play a trick on my mind and think I'm her. How would I want her to be treated and how would I want her to conduct herself? Because again, she's such a tremendous young woman that I know she would do better than me. And so I kind of did that. I was like, if this was my daughter, how would I want to see this go down? And me leaving was the only option.
So big respect for that. Not a lot of people would. You do have the clout chasers or the people who still live in La La Land who just aren't always honest with themselves about the situation. So that's really huge. Speaking of leaving, going back, like you rewatched it when it came out.
No, we never saw it until it came out.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Right.
That's what I meant. I was like, when it came out, like you watched.
For sure. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had viewing parties, but mostly I just wanted to sit at home and by myself where it was quiet and watch, you know?
That's also how I feel like I would do if I was there. I would do a reunion show, like if they asked, but you can't catch me being caught off guard by how things are edited or also seeing the other side. I was like, I say there are three sides to every conversation. There's what you say, there's what I say, and then there's actually what happened.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
totally fair.
And so you can't just catch me out in public with a group of people around. And especially if it's a part where I'm being like embarrassed or like made a foot of, or like I do something a little cringeworthy, I need to experience that at home. And then when we come to talk about it at the reunion, I'm prepared. I know what's going to be brought up. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, I was very anxious about how the episode you're getting ready to watch, how I was going to be portrayed and what all would be included. Because I did say some things that I would consider maybe out of character or less than flattering about myself that seemed kind of boastful. Because I was like, fuck this shit. I make this much money and blurted it out. You know, I'm like, how tacky is that? You know, and then
Yeah.
and I've got like coworkers watching. They don't need to know how much I'm making. So like I was, you know, like I was like, Lannette, that was so classless. But fortunately, the editors, I will say, in my opinion, were very kind to me in the way they portrayed me, I think, throughout the show.
Because we actually like you.
Yeah.
Protect Lynette. That was a hashtag that I should have started. No, which is really good. But also, I feel like if the roles were flipped and a guy had did that, they probably wouldn't have made as big of a stink.
Sure. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And
Now,
and in all fairness, I don't remember what all I said during that time because I'd had a few glasses of wine that night. I mean, I wasn't by any means drunk or trash. I was well within my lucid state.
right.
But when I get really emotional like that, my thinking brain kind of shuts off and it becomes just very visceral. And so I don't really remember
Mhm.
a lot of that because I watched it and I went, wow, that was good.
I was like, should I become an actor? Am I? No. I was like, no, but yeah, when you are really passionate, or I call it authentic, when I'm being my authentic self, a few glasses of wine or a little bit of tequila does help me become more authentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, your mind blanks out and you just put on the performance of your life because you're so drawn into that moment, you know, it's just eating away at you.
Absolutely.
So,
And I forgot the cameras were there. Like I wasn't playing to the cameras. I was so upset.
mhm.
And everything that I've been struggling with for my whole life just fucking came out. It came flooding out. The feelings of unworthiness, the feelings of I'm not enough, the feelings that I'm not lovable because I'm so broken, that I will never be in love because I don't know how to do it. I'm not capable of it because I've been so hurt and I've been so broken, and that's just not in the cards for me. And coming to terms with that of being alone the rest of my life. And it's, you know, it was a lot. And poor Anthony just, you know, he stepped on a landmine. He had no idea what he was walking into. And boy,
I
did
guess you
I
never
show
really
him.
do with a landmine. That's kind of like the whole point. Listen, if you're gonna get on the battlefield of love, you can't be afraid of getting a little messy.
That's a great metaphor. I like that.
The landmine won't be the only thing that blows sometimes.
If you're lucky.
If if you're lucky, you know. That was good that that happened. But I was like, I don't think you're gonna be alone forever. Like we've been saying, or like I've been saying, nobody else is here. But I was like, you're so authentic, you're so genuine. I guarantee your DMs are still full, like
Of
just as
married
full as they
men.
were before. What'd you say?
Of married men.
Well, you know, they're only married until they're not.
I have no interest in like interfering in a family and destroying a family the way mine was destroyed. You know, I that's going to be a generational curse that does not get passed on, right?
I get it.
Now, does that, and I'm not trying to be like Miss Do Goody, because like, sure, have I had trysts or you know, maybe something here or there with a man that I knew was married? I'm not above keeping it real. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, you
Yeah.
know, a lot of women have, and that doesn't make it okay. And I'm not proud of that fact. Hell, I've done a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of, but that's the truth. But it was never done with the intention of, I want him and I want the family and I want him to leave her. Never was that part of the equation, you know?
I always say I'm not a home wrecker.
Right.
I was like, listen, I was just here. If you came outside, your home was already wrecked.
That's a compelling argument too.
If I go in there and I know and I stir the pot, that's what I was
Right.
like, I'm never mad at the person who I'm never mad at the mistress or mister.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
you didn't know. So I was like, you didn't wreck the home. I
Well,
was
and
like
if
the other
somebody's
person.
stepping out on their partner,
Yeah.
that's symptomatic of a bigger problem within the relationship or within the marriage. The cheating is not the problem. It's the symptom that there's a bigger problem there.
Right.
But that's between them, and I dealt with it in my marriage a lot, a lot. And having been on both sides of it, which side would I rather be on? I'd rather be in the know, because not knowing and then suddenly finding out or stumbling across it or getting that knock on the door or that random voicemail or that random email going, hey, so and so, this is who I am. No. That for me was very traumatic, and I never want to have that again. I would much rather be in the know. You are a riot. Do you hear me? You are a
Listen,
riot.
one thing you never have to worry about with me in a relationship, not just you, anybody listening, watching, I will tell you exactly what like the filter, I lost it somewhere, it got broken, it was defective. So you're always going to know what's going on in my head.
I love that because it's so refreshing. Because how hard is it to look at somebody and try to figure out what the fuck is going
Yeah.
on?
I call it Amelia Bedelia syndrome. Like, I don't know if you ever read that to your son growing up, but
Books, yes.
yeah, everybody's like, what? And I was like, the maid, and they're like, oh yeah. Whatever I say literally, or whatever you tell me literally, that's what I'll do. Like, that's how what I understand. I don't try to add my own context. I'm not an author. I was like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. I hope you do the same, because I'm not Inspector Gadget or Sherlock Holmes. I just don't have the energy to like detect or inquire on what you mean. Just shoot straight.
Absolutely. And there's always a right and a wrong way to do things. And I mean, my career basically sometimes involves delivering very bad news to people as far as like, their services and their access to data or whatever. And so I have learned how to deliver potentially negative or, things that could have some significant financial ramifications in a way that makes it palatable. It makes it received well so that it doesn't incite chaos or tension. And I didn't really think that that was a gift until I started working with people that couldn't do that. And I realized, oh my God, like, duh, because it just comes to me naturally because I'm the youngest of five and I was always the peacekeeper because my house was very violent and was very unpredictable. So I learned very early to stay safe, that I had to like make sure everybody was okay. And I had to learn how to say things and do things in a way not to upset people. And so I turned that into a career, basically. I mean, it's one aspect of my career, but it's an important one to be able to communicate that way. And, a lot of times I do say things that are very frank and direct, but I like to think that I frame it in such a way that it's not offensive or hurtful. But yet sometimes the truth in and of itself hurts, and I can't always take that away. That's kind of up to the receiver to deal with that. But that's when you can say that's a you problem, not a me problem.
I always love to tell people that statements are just statements. They're not positive or negative. It's just how you look at them. So
It's your perspective.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something I try to teach my kids is every situation has a silver lining. Sometimes you have to look a little harder to find it. But I don't care how negative or traumatic or awful the occurrence or experience was. There is always something positive in it. Always.
I know it's just starting to get good, but you know what time it is. It's time for you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. That way, when part 2 of this episode with Lannette drops, you're the first to know and you can hop right back into it. But I will see all you amazing bachelors and bachelorettes for another new episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad next week.